They said, if you feel as though you're choosing your actions and not just being strung along via determinism, compare yourself to someone who doesn't feel as though they're choosing their actions. And they're saying, like, what accounts for the difference in this feeling of people who feel that they're just on a deterministic path and other people who might think that they have this kind of feeling of full blown libertarian free will?
Background knowledge. I mean, it's just a trained belief, like people who believe the world is flat or people who believe in Vishnu as opposed to Christianity. It's just a learned belief system. If you have the correct background knowledge, it will inform your belief about whether your choices are free or whether your choices are determined. Because of my knowledge in philosophy and the logical contradictions in free will, then I fully feel as if all of my actions are determined by prior reasons. And I have no feeling that they're free in any sense at all, or that I could have done otherwise. Like if I could have gone back in time, fully I fully believe that I would have made every single same choice I have so far, and it was impossible for me to choose otherwise.
Gotcha. And
Okay, so I understand why um, T-Jump misinterpreted my question here because actually, to be fair, it is worded in a sort of difficult way, and it's kind of hard to convey what I was actually asking in the like whatever 250 word limit. So let me just be clear. I'm asking about, I mean, among humans or even among potentially intelligent animals or even AI outside of humans. I think I would hope, or I think it at least appears that most people are experiencing, at the very least, an illusion of free will, right? That's why this is such a contested topic among people, is because we all kind of realize that at the very least we feel like we're controlling our actions. And then, of course, some people say that we're not and they're all predetermined. But what I'm asking about here is if there's people, not if there's people who simply are aware it's an illusion but nonetheless are experiencing the illusion. That's sort of what T Jump said. He basically said like, oh, so person A and person B both they both, the only difference between them might be that one of them thinks they have free will and the other one is experiencing what appears to be an illusion of free will, but just thinks that it's determined. So, like, that's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking about if there's a person that doesn't even actually feel like they're controlling their actions, right? Like someone who literally doesn't even think they're doing anything. It's kind of like someone that might feel like a voyeur in their own body, and they're literally just observing their actions, but they're not controlling them. So if there is a person like that, or if there's not a person like that, if there's not a person like that, that's interesting because that says that all people have some kind of at least illusion of free will. Illusion of free will. But if there is a person like that, what what accounts for that at the very least illusion? That's what I'm asking about. Because if we think about you can imagine a hyper intelligent AI that wouldn't have, as far as I can, I mean, I can't be certain of it, obviously, but I think we can imagine that an AI, regardless of intelligence, probably wouldn't, there'd be no reason I can imagine why it would have a, phenomenological experience in that it believes it's, um, controlling or choosing its own actions. Is that emergent from intelligence alone? That's kind of the underpinning question here. I don't think it is. I think it's unique to human beings. Um, the example I use, whether you think it's horrible or great, the only reason I use it is because it's kind of visceral. Is the self-immolating monks? It's like when you look at how other species or forms of intelligence act, you typically don't observe the ability to, I guess, move outside of like self-preservation and physical thriving in order to sort of protest or advocate for a abstract concept or goal. That's just one example, but I think most people would probably agree that even a lower intelligence person is still going to feel like they are controlling their actions, whereas a super high intelligence AI, or even like something like a super high intelligence dolphin or something, I don't know. I don't really, again, I'm not super familiar with animal intelligence, but like whatever the most intelligent thing would be, does it have that same kind of, whether it be a real control of one's actions or at the very least an illusion? Where does that come from? That's what I'm specifically inquiring about, and I'm asking, is that simply emergent from intelligence, or is that uniquely human? So, and that'll kind of tie into the third question here, but that was my question for this one. So, next one, let's go.
Appreciate that. Sunflower said, Tom, can you hypothetically calculate every action someone will make in their future? If so, what happens if you do? And then show them the data. Could they choose not to do what the data dictates?
You could hypothetically predict every action someone will take, and then if you showed them the data after you calculated it and added a new effect that wasn't calculated before, then it would be something new. But if it was a part of the previously calculated data, then you'd already know what they were going to do.
Gotcha.
It's how people manipulate people.
Next.
So I think this is the most interesting question of the three in this video. It goes into determinism and all of that. So I don't really understand Tom Jump's answer, because what he says is you can calculate someone's behavior. Okay, so that's the first thing he says. Yes, you can calculate someone's behavior. And then he says, but if showing them the data of what they're going to do changes that, then you won't know what they're going to do. So then that means you never actually calculated their behavior in the first place. Like, do you see the paradox here? Because if determinism is true, then in the calculation you do originally, part of it should be you showing them the data and them reacting in a different way. Again, this is the sort of difficult part of this question. And so I think this reveals that you can't actually make a calculation that predicts someone's behavior, because if you could, then showing them the data wouldn't change that, because that would be incorporated in the calculation, right? So this, in my opinion, is a really interesting topic, in that it kind of gives rise to some sort of what feels like a supernatural aspect to will, right? Because I can't imagine any other species or animal or thing or even a being that can be that in if provided a calculated information about how it will behave, what other being is capable of simply deciding to do something else, if not for purely out of rebellion or spite or to disprove the calculation? That the essence of that capacity feels special. It feels like it's something else, like something else is going on. So that's what that was the purpose of that question. I'm not sure if I'm missing something, if there's some sort of principle, like some sort of quantum principle that T-Jump actually accounted for, that would allow you to, quote unquote, calculate what someone's going to do, but then in reality you didn't calculate it because it's going to change when they see the data. So again, maybe there's something there that I'm just overlooking, some sort of principle. But as far as I can tell, that that wasn't really a acceptable or valid answer to my question.
And I hate to do this, but Sunflower says bricks can turn into walls, but can bricks turn into humans, Tom? Without a proposed method or mechanism of how the emergent property in question arises or forms, it's baseless to describe conscious rationality as an emergent property.
No, it is not, because we know that emergent consciousness exists even in unicellular microbes, and we can demonstrate that in laboratory studies.
Gotcha.
Emergent consciousness exists even in unicellular microbes. So I don't understand I'm not sure if he was being disingenuous. or maybe he just didn't understand the question. I did phrase it as conscious rationality, I believe, right? So, I understand that there's ways that scientific literature personifies things like unicellular unicellular organisms in terms of consciousness, but I it again, what I'm referring to is the, the human condition, the human phenomenological condition of being self-aware, and even if it's an illusion, at least having the illusion of will, of free will, right? That's what I'm invoking here when I ask the question about bricks not being able to add up to that. So appealing to some kind of like personified property in single cells, and saying like, oh, well, they are conscious too. It's like, well, obviously not in the way. I don't even think like animals are uh, are conscious and rational in the way that humans are. So I don't know if he like. Well, I would acknowledge that animals are having a subjective experience. I would argue that they're not self-aware and they don't feel as though they have like free will, right? So that's what I'm invoking, and that's why you know that's why the question was about pointing to something as an emergent property without a proposed mechanism feels like I could say, if you observe, and I'll try to wrap this up here. If you observe a a property coming from something that just doesn't make sense, right? Like, let's say all of a sudden, when when you stack 1,000 bricks on top of each other, the pile of bricks starts talking to you. And then like you can kind of see that this happens sometimes in nature, where like every time you stack enough bricks, it starts talking, and you go, oh well, yeah, speech is an emergent property of stacking bricks. It's like, well, on one level, yes, but that doesn't really get us anywhere, right? All your like, if you don't have any more information than that, and it just seems like mystical or supernatural, then calling it an emergent property is fine, but it doesn't really, it doesn't solve the you know like sort of difficult or hard to fathom and comprehend thing going on, which in this case would be human consciousness. That's this thing that is a contested topic and debated, like, right. So that's where I was going with that, and I mean, I think that question was a little cheeky, the way I said it's baseless. That was kind of like a jab. Maybe it's not totally baseless, but I kind of just wanted an answer for it, and I feel like that was just a dumb answer. I don't understand how he, and like, it's funny. Tjump didn't even didn't even answer it, but I don't know. I don't find that to be an acceptable or valid answer either. But let me know your thoughts, guys. I'd love to talk to anyone either in the comments or maybe potentially on voice. Thanks so much. Bye bye.